Welcome to What's for Lunch? Conversations about trends and trade in food and ag and how they affect what's on your plate. And one of the nice things about these conversations is that they're conversations that nobody else is having. We bring relevant information to you in a unique way. It's relevant to food businesses, farmers, and consumers. It's unique because it approaches these relevant issues from a very different angle. I'm Susan Burns, your lunchtime host and on-call business lawyer. Our motto is always interesting, always lively, and no exception to that. We are talking again with Sari Kimball, and this is episode 7 of What's for Lunch, and Sari also was with us on episode 5. She is the founder of Food Business Success, and today she's going to talk to us about some of the top 10 mistakes food businesses make, and more importantly, how to avoid them. Now, you can guess that in our first conversation, we went through 5 of those top 10, and today we're going to go through the remaining 5 of those mistakes so you can hear about what they are and you can avoid those. Sari has a mission to help packaged food and beverage entrepreneurs grow into profitable businesses, a woman after my own heart. So she combines her 15 years of food business experience to help you navigate the complex consumer packaged goods industry. Welcome, Sari.
Yeah, thank you for having me back. It's fun to be here.
Great. We have to finish out that top 10. I'm dying to hear about the other 5.
Right.
Before we dig in, tell us about your course called Food Business Success and some of the other services that you offer. And then at the end of this, we'll let people know where they can reach you or how they can reach you. But tell us a little bit about what you offer.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. So I have Sari Kimball Consulting, which is a food industry consulting business. So I mainly work with packaged food producers and help them with business strategy, everything from their financials and how to scale up and packaging and labels, and then also marketing and branding. And then what's typically called a go-to market strategy. So when they're ready to launch, all of the things that we need to do. And I love working with brands in that capacity and a one-on-one capacity, but not everybody can afford that one-on-one consultant to do everything for them. So I got a lot of requests for more of a DIY package. And so that's why I created Food Business Success. So that is meant for, it's an online course that combines modules, pre-recorded modules, check sheets, worksheets, resources, as well as group Q&A time and some private one-on-one consulting with me to get those specific questions answered. So I like that it's a hybrid. It's not just all a one, you just take the course, but you're in this vacuum that you get to ask questions and follow up. So those are, the kind of the 2 offerings, the 2 hats that I wear, so to speak, under my business.
That's great. And I've been following you on Instagram for quite a while, and it looks like your clients are very pleased with the service you provide and experiencing success. So that's just wonderful to see.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. So let's talk about the final 5 and
Absolutely.
work with people to make sure they don't make these mistakes. So one of the things that you say is a major mistake that food businesses make is that they don't understand the ins and outs of the food industry, which I guess that wouldn't be something you would just know. You don't learn that in grade school, that's for sure. So talk to us
You
about
don't. Yeah, I find that a lot of, food is very democratic. We all eat, and many people make something that they're really proud of, that they're really passionate about, and they want to share with other people, which is fantastic. That's where, that's where we should have have our food coming from the passion and solving problems like around dietary issues or things like that. But a lot of these people, yeah, they didn't grow up in the food industry. They haven't worked in the food industry. They have other jobs. I work with a lot of scientists and engineers and retired folks and all walks of life, but certainly most do not come from the food industry. So I think that there's a certain amount of idealism or naivety around how, like, I can just get these in the stores and I'm gonna be rolling in the money. And that's just not how the food industry works. And
Mhm.
so, you know, you really got to understand your numbers up front and understand how the food industry works. So there's a lot of terminology that is really foreign to people, like slotting fees and scan backs and demos and markups and distributors, brokers. Like, there's just all of these things that people are like, what?
Yeah. So when you move on from the farmer's market stage of things, it gets a little more complicated.
It does. And so you need to understand the roles that those people play and kind of at what level are you going to need those services, and when can you kind of hold off, and when do you need to, make that investment in those various terminologies, for a better word.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is that then I also hear, well, I don't want to go traditional wholesale. Let's just go into Amazon, or go on e-commerce. And again,
Just,
it's not it's just, let
yeah,
me
let's
just do
just,
that.
yeah.
But the reality is that, e-commerce, like, there's just so much competition, and Amazon is a huge animal to understand and manage. So even if you're, whether it's a hybrid or you just want to do e-commerce, there's a lot of terminology and learning curve with Amazon and those marketplaces as well. So I always kind of cringe a little when people just say, "Oh, I'll just throw it up on Amazon." And
Yeah, I would too. I mean, then that's true for any industry you're in. I've worked with people who've written books. Yeah, I'm going
absolutely,
to sell it on Amazon. I'm like, okay.
yeah,
There's a lot to it for any industry, and I think you worked at Whole Foods for quite a while, and so I'm sure that experience also helps you be able to guide people through the ins and outs of what the food business really is all about. Um, just having that direct experience, and
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Certainly a lot of firsthand knowledge, and then I just keep learning as well. And um, you know, it's something that I would never expect anybody to know. Just like, you as an attorney, we talked about, like, people say, well, how do I do that? And you're like, well, that's my job.
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
exactly. No,
I'm
but
the
somehow
expert.
people think they're supposed to know how to do stuff or that they can just research it online and do it. And it's there's a reason people are professionals in various industries because there's a
Right.
lot to it. And one of those things, and that's another one of your top 10, is people going into the food business and they don't have the right licenses, or maybe they haven't done the testing they need, or they haven't registered. Talk to us about that.
Right. Yeah, so again, going into a wholesale situation, going into the food industry, the food industry just has a lot more regulation than, if you wanted to knit scarves for the farmers market or even sell them wholesale. There's very little barriers to entry, but there's a lot more required. We have a lot more government oversight, from the FDA to the USDA, and then of course our state and local, county, regional health departments. So navigating all of that again can be pretty tricky, and I don't expect people to know all of that up front. So I try to help, level the lessen the learning curve, flatten that learning curve. But it is a big deal. Like, your labels need to be correct. You need to have the right licenses. You need to have the right, get things tested. No, represent the nutritional facts correctly. Make sure you're registered with all of the right agencies. So I always recommend just, like, going to somebody who knows those answers instead of just trying to figure it out. Because government agencies, often you'll hear different things from different people and be
Right.
more confused than ever.
Right. And it depends if it's state and local and or state, local, or federal, and there can be confusing conflicts between all of those, and how do you sort that out and which one is the operative regulation to go with. And when people like big companies launch, they have a whole staff of people that work on these issues. So if Walmart or Whole Foods launches an own brand, they have like many people, many different people that are specialized in each one of these areas. So I think it's great that you're providing this and leveling the playing field a bit, so that small businesses do have access to the information and they have a much better chance of success, because we need that diversity in the marketplace. That's why I'm such a big fan of small businesses.
Yes, absolutely. They're helping to make our food system better and give us more choices. And so I want to do everything I can to help those folks succeed and compete with the big guys. So
Yeah, it's more tasty, and I like to eat.
exactly. It's really a
Self-motivation.
selfish,
Yeah.
very selfish.
So,
I just want better.
so I touched on hiring an expert when I was talking about the big food companies that use all kinds of in-house experts. How about, when you're a little guy and you don't hire an expert, which is one of your top 10 big mistakes, how do you navigate that?
Yeah, so I look at it as like even though you're a little business, a small business, a business with a small b, that you still need to put together a team of experts in the right spots and almost have that as a contract team, not as an in-house team. But you really do need to put together your bench of an attorney, some help with your finances around bookkeeping and making sure you're keeping the books correct and doing your taxes and all of that. Things
Marketing.
like marketing to some extent. And, everybody comes in with their set of skills. So I actually was just talking with one of my students through Food Business Success right before this. And, she has a marketing background. And so she's not going to necessarily need that specialized marketing service right now. But other people I talk to are like, I don't even have a Facebook account.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to do that stuff. So you need to kind of know your own strength, but then fill out your bench with that team that you're going to need to be successful. Things like FDA labeling, making sure, getting somebody to check that. Don't just assume that it's correct.
Yeah, for sure.
And again, you can't be an expert in anything. I call it hiring up or delegating up. And again, it's so great that we have contract, consultants and contract positions, so you don't have to hire all of these employees to begin. But having some kind of budget that says I can't know everything, nor do I want to take the time to
Well,
do
that's the
that.
other thing, right?
So,
How do you ever get anything to
yeah,
market if you're spending time learning all the aspects of a food business? It
right.
just wouldn't
And
happen, you know. And I
yeah,
go ahead.
well, you can take all the time. I mean, you can say, well, maybe I have a lot more time than money, and you can do a lot of your own research, but things like FDA labeling or making sure that your contracts, we've talked about contracts being, reviewed by an attorney, that you could have all the time in the world, but you still need to get those things checked. And so I think that there's a certain amount of like being vulnerable and saying, I don't know everything. I'm going to get the right help at the right time.
I agree with you, and I like how you phrased it, like a team or your bench. Like these are my people, and they're behind me, and they're going to help me be successful. And
Absolutely.
and I
Yeah.
love that you mentioned having a lawyer on your team. A lot of people don't think of that, which is a big shock to me. And also, like when you were talking about labeling, I think people think, well, I'll just take another label. I can look at a label and I'll do the same thing. But, there was that case about now I don't remember the name of the company, but they had love as an ingredient. It was a granola bar or something. And the FDA went after them and said they had to,
Wow.
so they had to change all of their labeling because love is not an ingredient.
Right. Yeah, I look at labels all the time. It's something I'm just very, it's like I spend my free time, grocery stores looking at packaging and labels, and I can find usually 2 to 5 things wrong with just about any label. So
Mhm.
don't copy somebody else's and assume it's correct.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I get that too. People saying, well, I use Sari's contract and just change the names. I'm like, okay, good.
Right,
And
right.
now you're here.
Yeah. So there's
Oh,
just definitely
funny.
areas. Delegate up, free up your time to do the things that you're really good at. Like if you are terrible at sales, then find somebody who can do your sales for you, right? Like spend your time in your strengths and do that, and then fill out your bench with the other folks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. And okay, hiring an expert. Oh, let's see. What else do we want to talk about here? I have your list, and I'm
Yeah.
I'm
So
hopping around it.
that's okay. I think so I think the other, it kind of goes along with the food industry. I talk about your profit margins, and really, I think a lot
Yeah.
of people go in saying, oh, I'm going to make, I have a 50% or 60% gross margin. Like this is great. But when you start going into wholesale and then into distribution, like I said, there's all of these. Oftentimes, this industry is referred to as death by a thousand cuts because everybody takes all their pieces, their piece of the
Oh.
pie, and you kind of get the scraps that are left over. And I think it can be really surprising for people how expensive it is to have a bigger regional, national brand. Because when you're at a farmer's market, you're having a one-to-one relationship, and you can chart, you're getting those. There's no middlemen in there. You get all the
Mhm.
profit. But it's also it's a quality relationship, and there's a limit to your sales and how many markets you can be at, right? So when you want to grow, you're going to go into a wholesale situation. Now it's a quantity over quality relationship. It's all about making a lot more and getting more efficient, which is great. But like I said, then now you need to hire a broker. Now you're paying for promotions, and you're paying to go into distribution. I mean, sometimes slotting fees are where grocery stores actually make you pay to be on the shelf, which is
Mhm.
a kind of a new thing that's come about. So I recommend actually following Wild Zora is a great company. If you can look up some of Josh Tobin's stuff, he has some great stories about. They started Wild Zora. It's like a meat bar, and one of those kind of paleo dehydrated meat bars. And they were in 800 stores. And he said we had 6 months left of cash based on
Mm.
just being in those stores because of all of these costs that they were incurring: promotions, coupons, scanbacks, demos, slotting fees, on and on and on. So that leads into not understanding how much it will take to really be profitable. I
Mhm.
mean, you can be profitable on a small scale, but if you're wanting to make this your full-time income, you're really going to have to scale up. And so understanding those numbers and how much you're going to have to take out of your your gross profit. And of course, you want to be getting more efficient with your cost of goods sold. You're going to be buying in much larger quantities. Your labor gets more efficient. Um, but you do need to really plan ahead and understand that this is a high cash burn industry to go into at first. And so there's no emergency $200,000. At least I don't know how to get much money.
You mean a slush fund?
Um, Well, yeah, exactly. Unless you
Yeah.
have like a rich uncle or something.
Right. Right.
Or you're, one of these actors that goes into starting a food business. But most people need to plan well in advance to
Hmm.
scale up. Um, I have a client right now who's gotten into distribution, and he's starting to get into some big accounts, like big grocery stores. And you have to pay for all of your product up front, and that cash flow cycle can be really challenging because he has to get all the product made, pay for all the inventory, then get it to the distributor, and then wait that 30 to 60 days before he ever gets paid. So he's looking at how do I float that cash for a
Hmm.
little while.
Hmm.
Um, and every time you scale up to the next level, whether you go from farmers markets to small wholesale and then regional and then national, you're going to need more money each time you scale up. So making sure that you're planning ahead. The magic number I typically throw out when that I see time and time again when people are wanting to go into kind of that regional next phase
Hmm.
is about $250,000 in sales is what you need to be bringing in. And typically, when I say that number, jaws drop, and they're like, "What? I'm making,
Yeah.
I had $30,000 in sales." But that's where you're like paying yourself. You have some staff. You are, you're paying for the cost of sales, and you're starting to get the efficiencies and the economies of scale starting to come back and reward you. So and there's some profit at the end. So understanding that that's your goal, but then you can, at least what you need to be looking ahead towards.
That's good information and very sage advice. And I think probably, talking about finance and financing an operation as a whole, as a whole, actually series of of podcasts that we could do on, how do you finance a food business and what goes into that and where do you look and all that. Um,
Yeah.
but but that's not our goal today. But I think it's a really critical aspect. And like you said, understanding the profitability is such a key thing. You don't go from making salsa in your kitchen to being on store shelves and nationally.
Right. There's definitely that learning curve and a lot of money and time investment of many ways that's going to go into it. And I want people to follow their goals. Like not everybody wants to be a national brand, and that's fine.
Exactly.
That's great. So be realistic about your goals, but I don't want anybody starting a really expensive hobby and then shutting the doors after 3 or 5 years because they're like, oh, I'm not paying myself. I'm exhausted.
Hmm. Hmm.
Or I'm making $5,000 when all is said and done. It's like, is this really worth it? So you have to decide, like, what am I trying to get out of this? And I don't know about you, but I find a lot of early stage entrepreneurs, they're very passionate and they're not necessarily in it for the money, which is fine, but it's also like, well, no, when you don't have money, you can't make an impact. And so
Right.
if you really want your product to be out in the world, how you need some money to you need to be profitable.
Well, and I do see that. I think especially with like I'll call it health conscious foods. Like if you drink my kombucha or you eat my sauerkraut, you're going to have, this, and this health benefit, which is a whole nother issue of claiming health benefits. But, um, you know, and then I'm on a mission. I don't care how much money I make. I just need to want to keep making it. But you can't spread it very far if you're not making money, you know.
Exactly. Yeah. I
Plus,
love I love the passion and altruism in many of these products, but you're
that's
not going to be in
great.
business for very long if you lose money. So,
Right. And you can still be passionate about it and be smart and make money. And I think a lot of times, the people that create these products they're true artists. And so their skill set isn't the business side. And that's why we need people like you and lawyers like me and accountants and people, your team, your bench. That's why you need
yep.
people that can advise you and help you pursue that passion and spread the word.
Absolutely.
and the
Yeah.
good food.
Yes. You definitely need to wear that business hat and not just the passion hat. And that's if that's a hat you don't want to wear, then fill out your and make a team that will help fill that out for you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, in making that profit, I think one of the things is that people don't understand their market. I think that's one of the points that you made. So I think to some extent, spending a year or two at the farmers market would tell you a lot about marketing. But how do people do that? How do you avoid making that mistake of not understanding your market?
As far as your ideal, like your customer market, is that what you're speaking to? Yeah. So, sometimes you are
Well,
your ideal.
understanding who your ideal customer is. That's what I
Mhm.
am meaning. Yes.
Going into that. Yeah. So definitely I find that people, when they're really passionate about something, that they're making it to solve a problem or fill a need for themselves that they love. Um, they've made an amazing gluten-free. Actually, I just met with somebody who's making these amazing vegan cheeses. Right, so they're fulfilling their own needs and creating something that they really love, but they may or may not be their ideal customer, and by that I mean um, there's ideal customers. So I want you to get really, really specific, like narrow it down to one person that is who you are directing all of your messaging to, and then you're going to have these customer segments. So let's say your ideal customer is a 35-year-old woman with two kids and a certain level of income and education and lives in a certain place. It really helps you as the business to not just be throwing spaghetti at the wall and hoping something sticks. The example I usually use is like in the energy bar section of the grocery store. It's like there's hundreds of brands and
Yes.
so many varieties.
Or
How do you even
yogurt.
choose? Oh, yeah. I mean, any area of the grocery store, you're just overwhelmed with choices. And there's a very different customer, who's the CrossFit 30-year-old who lives alone and in an
Hmm.
urban environment than like a suburban mom who stays at home with her kids and is in has a different level of education and interests and things like that.
Hmm.
So um, understanding that you can't be everything to everyone, right? Like people love to say, well, everybody loves my salsa, everybody loves my jam, and that's probably just not true. I mean, there's going to be people who don't like salsa and people who don't like jam, but uh, you really want to identify that one kind of avatar, that character, that personality that you can really like put a face on and speak to, because it really helps narrow down your focus and really target that person. So like in that energy bar section, a Lara bar is marketed to a very different customer than like a RX bar or something like that, right? So
Hmm.
don't try to be everything to everyone.
Right.
uh, you're going to waste time, you're going to waste money, you're going to be all over the place and unfocused, and you're actually not going to reach anybody that way. So I really recommend, yeah, like I said, getting really specific, putting a name, printing off a picture of somebody who kind of represents that, because it'll help really guide your decisions, and you're going to be much smarter with your time and your money and your messaging and marketing and all that good stuff.
Hmm. All very important to be sure.
Right. And
Yeah.
that really should feed, I know we talked last time about branding, but you really should do the ideal customer piece first and then lead that into your branding, which is your logo and your personality and the colors and all of that. But typically people do it the other way around. They want to design the logo because that's the fun part.
Hmm. Hmm.
But they haven't actually thought through who their customer is. And so sometimes I find that it's like, we really need to redo this. And that costs a lot of money, or can cost some money. to get everything redesigned and repackaged and rebranded so that you are actually talking to your target customer. So they really need to be done together.
I agree. I agree. And business name is another aspect of that I have a whole series of, educational material on and blog posts. But how do you have a story of you can relate of somebody that had to rebrand or what they without blowing any confidence or calling someone out?
Yeah,
Do you have something you could
I
share
think
with us?
um, sometimes I definitely find I talk with people in early stages that have a. So actually, I've been working with a pet supplement company, and I'm not gonna give their name, but they had just a name, kind of a boring name that didn't really even say what they did. It was like just kind of technical, I guess, more than anything. And so I I was like, this just sounds too generic. I don't know what your product is. I don't know. It's not making me feel anything, right? Your customer wants to feel like you're speaking to them, like they trust you and there's this attachment. And they were doing great things with, they had great product and helping senior pets. And so they did go ahead. We went through my branding exercises and ideal customer, and they realized like, oh yeah, this is not reaching our customer at all. And so they are in the process of rebranding to something that feels much more kind of holistic and comforting, something that's going to reassure you and it creates a positive emotion, something that you can attach to. So they're doing a full rebrand now, and I think that'll be really helpful to communicate. It communicates how you're different in the market and not just kind of sterile name that is super generic. So
and again,
I'm excited to see the new
that'll
look.
that'll be great. I'm gonna watch on Instagram. Hey, well, that's the other thing of, people think, oh, when I work with businesses in growth mode, and there's always that stretch, and you talked about it before, when you go from farmers market to, local to regional to national, international, and each phase your resources are stretched, your time is stretched, everything's stretched. And I find people try to cut corners then, but this is an example of where you think you're saving money by we'll just do our own business name and not get help with that. But in the end, it costs you way more than if you would have just worked with somebody. Like if they would have just worked with you in this example in the beginning. So it can be very expensive. And those kinds of things can make or break the success of a small business.
Absolutely. And I mean, we won't get into it here, but if you have a great name, but you don't research it and then it's trademarked or you didn't trademark it. I mean, I've seen companies have to go through a full rebrand, and coming up with a new name is hard.
Yes.
You might as well do it right in the beginning, instead of being under pressure by, somebody else's attorney.
Right. And it's expensive in and of itself, and then you also lose customers. No matter how big or how good you are, you always lose customers in a rebrand. So, yeah. Well, this has been great. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, the one thing I would say on the flip side is that it is okay to start at a farmer's market with a small one-on-one relationship and use that as a great testing ground, as a focus group. So even though it's nice to have a kind of an understanding of your target customer before you design a logo, I do think that there is some room in there to say, oh, I'm hearing feedback about this. And so it's easier to make changes at that level. It's when you start getting into grocery stores and you got, e-commerce customers, that's when it's a lot harder to change. Right. So it's okay to kind of sort of know and then test it out, get feedback from that, from those customers that are right there in front of you. You learn a lot from people who tell you things, but you also learn a lot from the people who don't stop.
Yes, exactly. Or you start talking to them and they walk on by. Yeah.
I think why did they not buy?
Yeah, farmers markets are a great playground. I agree. I think it's
a really
good thing to do.
I definitely recommend that for everyone. I mean, Justin's Nut Butters started at the Boulder Farmers Market, and now
Oh,
it's a huge
really?
national brand. But most food businesses do start at a farmer's market just to get that build that relationship, create awareness, learn their messaging, learn their customer. So that's a great kind of low risk place to play and and make adjustments.
Yeah, I think it's great. Plus, it makes the farmers market more fun for those
Yeah,
of us who go. Um,
absolutely.
Sari, where do people find you? How can people connect with you?
Yeah, so the best place is through my website, which is foodbizsuccess.com, B-I-Z. That's probably the best place. I also have sarikimble.com, SARIKIMBELL. And then on social media, it's Food Biz Success as well for Instagram and Facebook. And we're also on LinkedIn and have a
Twitter.
great YouTube channel. Oh, yep, Twitter. Working on that. and and then I also launched a YouTube channel which has just 10 to 20-minute videos all on topics around these kind of very early stage issues around starting a food business.
Oh, awesome.
So yeah, so that's been really fun. Been trying to do a video a week and just really help people answer some of those questions like what licenses do I need and should I start a food business and,
Mm-hmm.
um, and some of these things that we're talking about. So obviously that's all free content and love people to go and check out those videos and subscribe to the channel and like them and share them.
So is the channel on YouTube Small Biz Success or Small Business Success
It's
I mean Food Biz,
if they
sorry.
look up, yeah, if they look up food business success on
Okay.
YouTube, you should be able to get to it.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
that sounds great. Well, thank you again so much for joining us and imparting your wisdom and your years of experience using those to help listeners of What's for Lunch. Really appreciate it.
absolutely. It's my pleasure to be here and spread the word, keep people starting their food businesses.
Yeah. Yes, will do. Hey, and my next podcast, I came across this guy he's an artist, a Mexican artist named Fernando. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, La Pase. And he works with this native corn in Mexico, and it's called Totomoctli. I'm not sure my pronunciation. And he works with this group and I've listened, they have a video on Vimeo, and I've listened to it a couple of times to get the pronunciation, but it's not native to me. And, but I think it's something like that, something close to that, Totomoctli. But it's the indigenous, like the original corn, and he uses the husks, which are different colors, to create um, different artworks. And is working with the village to help them, keep growing this corn. And so I'm hoping to interview him too in a couple of weeks. So that's a little bit different take on how we use agricultural products and promote preservation of our native seeds and biodiversity.
I love that. That
Yeah.
sounds really interesting.
Yeah. So I hope he says yes, but we'll see. If not, we'll have
Very
somebody
good.
else interesting, I'm sure.
Absolutely. You have a knack for finding great guests.
Yes. Case in point. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
Okay. Until next time.